Chapter 13, Section 8. The Revolution's Home Front. The American Revolution played out on many battlefields, but soldiers were not the only ones to take part. The war had many heroes, and it also had many victims. Women gave much to the American Revolution. Enslaved Africans and American Indians were also involved. What was the war's impact on these people? Rachel Wells lived in New Jersey at the time of the American Revolution. She never took part in any battles, but she played a role in the war and suffered the dangers of wartime. Wells was a widow, which means that her husband had died, but she was willing to do her part to support the war effort by lending money to the government of New Jersey. Her funds helped supply the soldiers fighting the British. As she later wrote, she threw in with all her might, which bought clothes and let them have blankets. Even with help like hers, however, the Patriots could not hold off the British. When armies advanced, women and children faced a choice to remain at home or to flee. Wells chose to stay. However, British soldiers came through Wells's town at one point. Before leaving, they robbed Wells of a very large sum of money, causing her to move to Philadelphia to try to rebuild her life. But by the war's end, she was living in poverty and had to beg the Continental Congress to help her get her money back. "Pray forget not the poor weaklings," she wrote in her plea. Wells's story shows that the American Revolution was about more than just soldiers and guns. It affected people all over the colonies. While many men marched off to battle, life went on for the people they left behind. Life on the home front could be complicated, and, as Wells found out, it could sometimes be dangerous. Women and the war. Attacks such as the one Wells suffered were common during the war. Soldiers on both sides of the fighting often raided towns, stealing money, food, clothing, firewood, and other supplies. Many women saw their homes destroyed. "Families flying from the houses," wrote one Virginia woman, describing an attack on her town. "Oh, shocking! Oh, horrible! Surely any spot of earth on this globe where freedom and peace can be enjoyed would now be more desirable than living here." Women faced other hardships too. Finding food was a challenge. Supplies were short and prices were high. Many families went hungry, and poor nutrition put people at risk for disease. Many women and children died from illness. Still, the women carried on and ran family businesses. They planted and harvested crops. They did their best to take care of their children. Many women contributed even more. A few served as spies, while others nursed the sick and the wounded. A nurse had a greater chance of dying from disease than a soldier had of dying in battle. Some women used their household skills for the war. For instance, women in Philadelphia led an effort to raise money and make clothing for the troops. Women also helped win public support for the war. Writer Mercy Otis Warren was one example, and so was Mary Catherine Goddard of Maryland, who helped publish a newspaper. Some women traveled with the troops, cared for them, and, in a few cases, took part in combat as well. Anna Lane was wounded at the Battle of Germantown in 1777. Deborah Sampson dressed as a man and fought in several battles. Only when she became sick with a fever did an army doctor discover her secret. Mary Ludwig Hayes McCauley, known as Molly Pitcher, took her husband's place as a gunner when he was hurt at the Battle of Monmouth in 1778. African Americans in the war. 500,000 slaves lived in the colonies in 1776. The American Revolution brought them challenges, choices, and opportunities. The British offered freedom to slaves who joined their side. Tens of thousands of enslaved African Americans took this offer and ran away from their owners. Many slaves gave valuable service to the British by fighting in battle, serving as spies, and performing many jobs in army camps. Some slaves did, in fact, win their freedom. However, running away was risky. Sometimes the British turned away slaves who wanted to join them, and the British even forced away many escaped slaves during the Battle of Yorktown. Many of them starved or died from disease, while others were caught and returned to their owners. Some African Americans fought for the Patriot cause. In 1775, for example, Salem Poor became a hero after fighting at the Battle of Bunker Hill in Boston. Early in the American Revolution, African Americans could not join the Patriot ranks. Some white colonists did not want to arm slaves, but this worry faded as the war dragged on. African Americans found ways to help the Patriots off the battlefield too. One example is James Armistead, who served as a spy and pretended to serve the British. For his work, Armistead won his freedom. African American women also helped the cause. Phyllis Wheatley was a slave and also a talented writer. She wrote a stirring poem that honored George Washington and raised people's spirits. This was vital during the long, difficult struggle. American Indians in the war. Another group affected by the American Revolution were American Indians, who saw both the colonists and the British as a threat. And both the colonists and the British sought to use American Indians to their own advantage. A few tribes helped the colonists, while some sided with the British. These tribes thought that the British were less of a threat to their way of life than the colonists were. Many American Indians, however, tried to stay out of the war. In fact, they hoped that the two sides would weaken each other, which would help American Indians. Staying out of the war proved very hard because few tribes could avoid being caught up in the fighting. Neither the British nor the Americans fully trusted the American Indians. They each punished them harshly for helping the other side, and both sides often raided American Indian villages to take food supplies. Hunger among the American Indians was widespread. By the war's end, many tribes were struggling to survive. The Patriot victory had only made things worse. The British had previously tried to slow Western settlement, but now they were gone. Soon, white settlers were again pushing west, moving in large numbers onto American Indian lands. The future of the American Indians was once again in doubt.